Right, thank you for attending Not So Basic Training, Transforming the Planning, Delivery, and Meaning of Your Staff Development Program. This is being presented by Jennifer Arnold, Cheryl Coyle, and Emily Leachman. There's a few housekeeping. If you would like to remove the closed captioning that we have at the bottom, there should be a live transcript CC button. You might have to minimize your chat and participant window to see it, but you should be able to on that and hide your subtitles. As a reminder, this session is being recorded. All chats will also be recorded, including private chats, and the recording of the sessions will be emailed to registrants after the conference is over. We will be monitoring the chat, so if you have any questions or comments as the presenters are talking, feel free to put the comments there. Make sure that it's going to everyone when sending a chat to the group. And so that's housekeeping, and I'll let you all take it away.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Thanks for being here and joining us this morning. We are from Central Piedmont Community College. My name is Emily Leachman. I work at the Central Campus, and I'm joined by Jennifer Arnold, our director, and Cheryl Coyle, my counterpart at the Levine campus. Central Piedmont Community College has 6 campuses, which will come up as we continue talking today. We're going to be talking about training, both in terms of what we had kind of been doing for our staff training prior to COVID. We're also touching on how we were able to pivot during COVID and where our plans are beyond that now that we are kind of coming out the other side of things. We want to start with just giving you a brief history of what training we already had in place for our library staff. We have a training committee as one of our library committees. In the 2015-2016, the library at Central Piedmont did a strategic plan, and several library committees were born out of that strategic plan, and the training committee was one of them. So the committee as it is today started meeting in July of 2016, and that charge to have the committee came directly out of the strategic planning process that the library did. One of the pieces of that charge was to make sure that the committee makeup was a cross-section of our library staff. So as I mentioned, we have 6 campuses, making sure we have representation, not from all 6 because that would be logistically impossible, but from multiple campus locations, a mix of professional and classified staff. And initially the committee did not have anyone from our library administration. I was asked to be chair when that committee was first created, and I could see pretty much from the get-go that in order for us to be successful, we needed to have a direct line to our administration. I went to Jennifer and asked her that we would like the representative and that I would like it to be her. So we have since added an official ex officio member from the administration to have a direct line, and that's been beneficial in many ways, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those specifically as we go along. So we had several charges in that initial strategic plan that the committee was put before the committee. And one is just kind of general, to be responsible for kind of offering general training to library staff. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about in depth. There were some specific initiatives that we worked on. One of them in the actual strategic plan talks about training new staff. This has led to a fairly robust onboarding system with a series of checklists, of meetings, of making sure that people are getting information and things, as well as just making connections with their coworkers as they are on, as new staff comes on. We've done that for both. We have separate checklists for both part-time and full-time staff. In that strategic plan, there were specific requests for training for working with people with exceptionalities. We've done that several times. We've started a cross-training program where, as I mentioned, with the different locations, we've been cross-training staff to work at different locations other than their normal home location. That's been something that's come up with the committee that we have done and implemented, and you'll see that coming up as well. We've also created kind of a training manual that gets given to new staff as they're onboarded. So these are things that were kind of decreed by that strategic plan that we were put in charge of. So one question, we're just kind of curious because we already existed prior to kind of COVID starting. Does your library have a training committee or staff that are specifically responsible for coordinating staff training activities? This is informal. If you just want to put answers in the chat, I'll kind of keep an eye on that for a minute. Nothing formal. we didn't have anything formal prior to this committee starting in 2016. I've got a no, another no. It's just kind of interesting to see what other places have set up. Another no, so multiple no's and one nothing formal. Another no, but we're quite small. We are larger, again, 6 campuses. I think with full-time and part-time staff, we have about 43 library staff total. That includes everyone from our dean to our part-time staff. I do from time to time ask staff doing elements of our training so that it's peer-to-peer rather than me doing all the training as division head. That's coming from Austina. That's great. And one of the things that we've really tried to emphasize that you'll see both specifically to our during COVID training, but that it's not training committee coordinates the training. We aren't necessarily the people always offering it. Sometimes we are, but a lot of times we kind of see our job more as coordinating and determining what training we need, as opposed to being the only people offering it. And that was a distinction that I cared about from the very beginning. All right, Cheryl, can I have the next slide? So just to give you a sense of what kinds of things we were doing prior to COVID kind of taking over, we do a lot of our meetings and things on Fridays. Several of the campuses have reduced hours on Fridays. The full-time staff come to Central on Fridays, and we have a meeting at the beginning, a schedule at the beginning of each semester of what our Friday trainings are, as Friday meeting schedule is, and 3 to 4 of those each semester are designated as training days. So that's one thing we were doing as a kind of formal designated trainings 3 to 4 times a semester. Did not do that as much during the summer, but during our fall and spring semesters. Several of our part-time staff don't work over the summer, so we tend to have an annual kind of welcome back in August as we gear up for the spring semester, mostly gearing towards part-time staff, but occasionally there'll be a session that we'll invite all staff to as well. That usually takes place in August as a half-day training. Another thing that came out of that strategic plan that was a recommendation of the facilitators helping us create the strategic plan is to do 2 full-day all-staff training days. One in the summer that's focused entirely on training, although they're sometimes integrating some fun things, and one in December that was kind of partial training, partial fun things. It's usually also envelops our holiday celebration. Those 2 things are actually assigned to the library administration in our strategic plan, but training committee does tend to help with those in terms of we've decided we need training on this. Can training committee do it or put together that kind of thing? So we help with that. I mentioned that cross-training program. We started piloting that in the summer of 2019. We've had anywhere from 3 to 6 participants each semester. Then we kind of coordinate the application process, the assigning to host campuses. We have that set up that when someone is cross-training, it's a full semester experience. And we had just our last in-person staff training day was on March 13th, 2020. Kind of just before everything was changing. We were all together in one room, no masks, no nothing. And we unveiled our LibGuide for training, and as something that was new for us, that hosted some things. And Cheryl's going to walk you through what that looked like at the time and what it looks like now.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so we realized we were doing all these trainings and having all this training material, and we'd finally gotten to a point where we needed to have it all in one place so that our employees, if you missed a training or if we wanted to refer back to something, everything would be in one place. Now, this is a quick screenshot. I'm going to bring us there to the live guide. It has been edited and reorganized several times as the needs arise, and I'm sure it will continue to do that in the future. Give me 1 second, and I'm going to switch screens. Do you guys all still see my library training resources homepage? Awesome. Okay, so we just wanted to put together a quick list, of what the training committee does, what it's responsible for, so that any of our new staff members would understand that. We originally started with tutorials. They were not quick tutorials, but it was just tutorials at the time. And we've since broken it up into many different things. And you can see a lot of these, were launch date. So when we started with about 9 different short videos, and most of these are under 5 minutes. That is exactly what they're meant to be, as a quick short tutorial for you so that you can watch it and refresh your brain on how to do something or a task or something like that. Resource of the month is also something we had been doing. We had been putting together kind of a monthly highlight of either a topic or a resource, one of our databases, things like that, to help our professional development of our staff, and also to make sure that everyone was, if we were requiring specific settings on your Outlook calendar, that everyone knew how to do those things. So that's what we had originally had. And then one of our original things, of course, was our onboarding and offboarding checklists. And we started with, well, they said yes, now what? And we figured that's really where most managers stand, because maybe you hire at most once every couple of years. We don't have a huge turnover. Most of it's part-time. But so what do you need to know for full-time versus part-time? When we launched this guide in March 2020, that was all that was on here. Everything else has been added. One of the first things we added when the pandemic started was the online webinars. We wanted our staff to focus on online webinars, to continue their development, continue their professional development in their areas. So we had all the staff funnel to us, the training committee, any of their information that they wanted on upcoming webinars. And if we got a recording of one, we could post the link there too. But we even just gave suggested websites. So like, we know the State Library of North Carolina, the train station, has all these websites, ACRL. So we knew that they would be constantly having updated webinars and schedules. So this was a way that people could also go and find their own training. One of the next thing we started was then recorded sessions. We started doing these full hour-long training sessions for our employees. And one of the first things we had to do was get them all up and running on the video software. We were using WebEx as a college. We had sort of been using it beforehand, but never requiring all staff to use it in this manner. So it was really just making sure everyone was up to speed on all the little tips and tricks and quirks. And what we really were able to do is we said, okay, so what are all those things that we want to train on that you never have enough time to train on? And we said, you know what, let's start with our database resources. And the other thing was we were moving our chat to 8 in the morning to 8 at night now. And so maybe you'd been on a desk before for a couple of hours a day, but you're going to be now on chat for the most part, and just being able to answer those reference questions much quicker and help expand our knowledge of what we really had, because we have a large spread of databases covering a variety of topics. So as you can see here, we did some on all of our different databases. We also did cover specific things on staff tools and staff and software. And then we also covered a little bit more kind of a general library staff training that we needed. Since then, we've also added archives training, and a lot of we're fortunate that we have a full-time archivist, Erin Alsop, who's actually on this call. And so we want to make sure we're trying to integrate it more with our instruction sessions and kind of getting our students to understand primary and secondary resources. And we have this wealth of primary resources right here about Charlotte. And so we're working with, I know Erin works really closely with our instruction team and different faculty to make sure we do this. And so we want to educate, again, all of our staff so that when you get questions at the reference desk or on chat, you can answer these questions. And so we're starting to build this whole new section. And so I'm sure we are going to change this guide again and again, and as our needs grow. Let me go back to the presentation. Whoops. I went back to the wrong slide, so give me 1 second. There we are. So we had a pandemic training shift. All our staff meetings, weekly staff meetings, were now virtual. And we needed to make sure that all of our staff could not only use the software, meet online, meet all the needs that were coming at us from not just us, but from the entire college. And as I mentioned, we have the expanded chat hours and additional staff coverage. So we really use this as an opportunity to expand everyone's professional development, to expand everyone's ability to train. And one of the things I'm going to mention, is it my next slide? Yes, we started a program of training Tuesdays at 2. So Tuesdays at 2 were our weekly training sessions. We did a survey, which Jennifer is going to talk about in a little bit. When we first started, it came from the training committee because we kind of knew what topics we needed to get out there first, like the software, like things like that we knew we needed to get to first. But we offered this and opened it up to all of our staff. We encouraged first-time presenters. Jennifer and I would offer a private one-on-one tutorial session with them so that they could kind of get through the technical glitches and difficulties that most people have. Most people might have knew Zoom, but they didn't know WebEx or vice versa. And so this is what we wanted to get them kind of comfortable doing that. And, you know, you're presenting to your fellow colleagues, and we kept it a very low pressure environment. Now, after we got through our round of ideas of all the kind of important things that we had to cover quickly, we asked the staff. I mean, ask the people who need the training what training they are looking for. And we encouraged all of our staff to participate. And the thing that was really important or kind of added more validity and emphasis to this was that our admin staff attended. So this training was for everyone. It was from the dean of the libraries down to every part-timer. Everyone was expected to join. Now, if you couldn't, we did record the Tuesdays at 2. So of course, due to scheduling, you could watch it at your own time, but you were expected to be aware of that information and to know that information. And I just think that really added a whole level of validity and importance of this isn't just fun times. We're not doing training for fun. This is actual, we're taking advantage of this pandemic, of having the time to have an hour-long training session every week to cover a topic. And so now Jennifer will tell you how we got some of that data.
Yeah, we'd like to talk a little bit about the role that assessment has played in sort of transforming our training and staff development program from sort of pre-COVID, during COVID, to what hopefully is going to become a post-COVID environment. So we first surveyed our staff about the Tuesdays at 2 training series in May of 2020, which was about 2 months after we started it. And the intent of the survey was really twofold. The first goal was to understand how staff were learning in this environment. And so we asked about things like technology and time frame. And second, we wanted to know if staff felt they were taking away useful information from the content of the training. So we asked if they learned something new, if they felt more confident using the resource or database, or if they gained awareness of library resources. You can move to the next slide, Joe. So what we learned is that the technology functioned really well. There were no major connection issues, no major sound issues, and that this kind of, we scheduled the training sessions for the app for an hour. Usually the presenter would go somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes, and we'd have time for questions. That time frame was really ideal in that it allowed for like a substantial presentation of the database or the content without becoming too overwhelming. This was a time where everyone was adjusting to spending their workday in front of the screen, in front of the camera. And so we wanted to balance that transition for staff as well as we could. And similarly, we also learned that the vast majority of our staff were learning and coming out of training with positive outcomes in terms of understanding the database that had been presented and how to use that database to answer student questions or to approach helping faculty and students work with the database to make an assignment more successful. So you can see the high percentages of positive outcomes that we saw from our staff. Next slide, Joe. And as with most surveys, the open-ended questions provided us with this clear window into where the training series was really working or what people really liked about it, as well as ideas for how to continue moving forward as we went into summer, and then later I'll talk about this past fall semester. So we just want to highlight a few of the major themes that we saw in these comments. One was that staff really enjoyed a focus on typical assignments or in student issues in using the database. So that approach helped them see how to use these databases in chat or eventually on the desk to help a student get what they needed. Second is how much staff liked learning these kinds of tips and tricks from their colleagues who had a particular expertise in using a database or in a particular subject area. So they really appreciated learning from each other in this way. And in the suggestions for future training, we saw that staff were willing to learn about a variety of topics in this particular format. And we felt that that spoke to the value they saw in both this particular format for training, as well as moving to a different kind of training program in terms of not just format, but frequency. As we talked about, we moved from 3 to 4 times a semester to more weekly. Content itself, different types of content that we were presenting that we hadn't done in the past, and presenter. Like Cheryl said, we encouraged a lot of first-time presenters to take advantage of the opportunity to get some experience, and we were there to help them through the process. So they felt confident when they were presenting in front of their colleagues. Next slide, Cheryl. We did a second survey at the end of the summer semester in order, one, to continue to assess staff learning, but also to understand again how to move forward in another semester. Particularly because unlike the summer semester last year, where all of our physical locations were closed, we were opening with some limited hours in services for the fall semester. So in the second survey, we repeated the same questions on learning, confidence, and awareness that were in the first survey, so we could see those trends over time. And we also repeated the call for additional topic suggestions. We also asked staff how to move forward with offering these sessions in the fall, given that we knew some people would still be working remotely, some people would also be working on campus. And we were looking for a way to make sure that we weren't designing a program so that staff at desks would be unable to attend, and also to balance the return to working on campus in terms of overall staff workload. Cheryl, did we lose the presentation? There we go.
You lost me for a second. I froze. I am on campus and I completely froze, so I apologize. You here?
Yep. Next slide. That's perfect. So overall, we learned a lot from doing this kind of assessment of this training series. We learned that the technology and the format works in both the sense that WebEx itself, technically functioned correctly for everyone, and also that the delivery method was successful in providing training that staff wanted, liked, and learned from. And as I mentioned earlier, we found that staff really liked learning from each other and from staff who had not been trainers in the past. It was nice to see new faces in our training program. And this approach that we took of colleagues presenting how they use a particular resource to help students with particular assignments or a particular type of research was really popular with staff. We also learned that these kind of simple surveys, just using 5 or 6 quick questions in a Google form, provided the kind of just-in-time information and feedback that was critical for successful planning as our pandemic training developed and evolved over these several semesters. They're a good way just to check in with staff to make sure that you're on the right track. And it's even more important, I think, to be responsive and communicate when we're working in a remote environment. We wanted the training to be relevant to staff, which is why we kept asking for suggestions and topics and for volunteers. We also, we would specifically say things like, this session is a result of a specific request or suggestion that we got in the survey. We wanted everyone outside of the training committee to know that the committee was paying attention to and using that feedback. And overall, the assessments were an important part of doing more to create a culture of feedback and input. Because I think we can probably all agree that it's frustrating to be asked for feedback or asked to input and then not see that feedback put into action or feel like it's disregarded. which can make people reluctant to give you feedback in the future. So we had done some assessment of in-person training in pre-COVID times, but I think this showed us another path for assessment than we kind of thought of before, as well as the value of this kind of remote live online training. So I am going to turn it over to Emily, who's going to talk a little bit more about another kind of program that came out of this assessment.
Thank you, Jennifer. So as Jennifer mentioned, being responsive to suggestions that were actually brought up when we did do assessment and ask for input was one of the things that was really important to us. And in that first round of surveys in May of 2020, we had some open-ended questions, as you saw, including asking for additional topics. And one of the suggestions, I believe the initial thing just said mask making. And it turned out that that suggestion, what came from one of my direct reports who contacted me and said, hey, that suggestion, that was me. Let me tell you what I meant, which was really helpful. But if you can think back to last spring, masks were not, you couldn't just walk into Target and buy them. It was hard, people weren't kind of making them yet for general public. We were getting the data that wearing them was helpful. People wanted to wear them to the grocery store and things. Elastic was impossible to find, things like that. Someone said, this direct report said, I want you, meaning me, to do a session on mask making. One of my hobbies is quilting, as you may have guessed, and it's known among the staff that that's something that I do. And I think Steph knew that I was making masks. And so she basically said, you know, we can't get these things. We can't get the supplies. We can't get the things to make our own. Can you show us some things that we can do? So that turned into, I did end up doing a session on no-sew masks. We surveyed people to find out if I needed to do sewing machine versus hand sewing versus no-sew. No-sew was very much kind of the winner there. And we did end up doing that session, but it led us down a path of some of the topics that we were starting to see suggested weren't necessarily completely research-based, focused on our students, things. People were kind of starting to ask for some things that were a little more off topic, a little more fun. So this turned into Fun Fridays, which that mask making was the first one. And we basically said, hey, do you staff have something you want to do a session on? It doesn't have to tie in to the workday. It can just be something for fun. Do you want to do a demonstration? Do you want to talk about something? And then in each session that we did, we would say, hey, if you've got an idea for one of these, you know, volunteer and join in the fun, basically. And we were seeing kind of a need in having some more social interaction. We were several months in, people didn't have that kind of social interaction. They didn't have seeing each other. We were still completely remote at this point. We didn't have services on campus until our August. So that was something that was kind of needed. And just to give you an example of some of the topics we had, Cheryl, if I could have the next slide. I mentioned the no-sew mask making. We had several other topics. Some of these photos are stock photos, but those cupcakes are actually Jennifer's cupcakes. Jennifer did a baking and decorating demonstration for us, talked about kind of some baking tips and then demonstrated the actual decorating. You can see other topics there as well. Some of these were things that people themselves said I can do. Some of them were topics that were suggested in that survey, and then we went and found someone who could do them. Gardening, I believe, was one that was suggested, and we had a staff person who was interested in doing that once she knew that that was a topic people wanted. Same with mindfulness, that actually came up with several people, and somebody who's involved in our campus community on mindfulness did a session. Food of Columbia, we actually asked, we have 2 staff people who are originally from Columbia, who happened to be married to each other, although they did meet at Central Piedmont Community College and not in Columbia. And they did a demonstration on, they kind of talked about some differences between American cuisine and Colombian cuisine, talked about some kind of things that characteristics, and then did a demonstration of what looked like an amazing dessert. The downfall of that particular session was it was right before lunch. We were all quite hungry at the end, and none of us had Colombian food at our homes, sadly. But we just kind of let people say what topics that they wanted to do. And the sessions kind of ended when we didn't have any more volunteers or suggestions of topics. So we just kind of let it kind of taper off as it went on and things. Can I have the next slide? We did see a lot of benefits. I think the biggest was the sense of community. As I mentioned, we were several months in, we were really kind of losing that. There was a lot, that's when a lot of the kind of first talks about concerns for mental health were coming up and getting to kind of to a point where people needed that kind of social interaction. We do think it helped with increased morale. Another thing that was a challenge for us specifically, since about 2010, I believe, the college had been on a, for summer had been on a 4-day, 10-hour day work week. And prior to the pandemic happening, that was changing back to a 5-day work week for the summer, which was new to all of us, to people who had been there for a long time. It had been 10 years since they had done a 5-day work week in the summer. Those of us who had been hired in the interim had never had a 5-day work week during the summer. So working Fridays was not new so much as just a change at Central Piedmont. And so it kind of gave us something kind of fun to ease back into that. We were 5-day the rest of the year, but kind of get back used to that. Yeah, thank you. So that increased morale, that's something to do, that kind of fun thing. I also think it really helped with kind of knowing who to go to for referrals. And I do feel like I came from a public library background. I do feel like this comes up more in the public library than it does at Central Piedmont that I've seen, but it still does come up where sometimes knowing what people's interests and hobbies are outside of work can help you know who to refer someone to if you've got a question that's kind of specialized. So in addition to what Jennifer and Cheryl were talking about in terms of people talking about their kind of professional specializations, sometimes it's really helpful to know what people's non-professional specializations are, because sometimes that does come up in a professional context. And even though we were kind of aiming for this to be fun, and we made it very clear that it did not have to have specific ties to our workplace, to our workplace goals, some of them did kind of naturally have some impact. One person who actually is on our training committee, one of their hobbies is 3D printing, and they have a 3D printer at home and they do a lot of things with it. Well, we are going to be opening a brand new library in spring of 2022. And one of the things we'll have in our library is a makerspace. That staff person will be the person running the makerspace. But in addition to kind of just a general, this is what I like to do for fun, in his demonstration, he gave examples of ways that we'll be able to use this technology in the library when we have it available to all of us. So he's printed some things that we've used in library displays, and he was able to show that as part of his Fun Friday presentation that will actually have kind of like, it kind of also worked as a coming soon attraction for things that we'll all be able to do when this new building opens. So that was really successful. As I did, it also kind of ended naturally when we ran out of topics.
One of
So
the
that
things
brings-
he printed, I'm just going to jump in,
thank you.
was
Yeah.
the ear savers. When we first were all going back, and everyone was having to wear masks for 8 hours a day, and kind of ear savers. So he printed some different sizes for us for all of our staff, so we were able to have those when we went back to work.
Yes. So another kind of participatory question, what has your library done to kind of help maintain or build morale during the pandemic, both maybe as a result of remote working, maybe you're not remote working, but what are some things, and again, you can just put it in the chat and I'll read some out, to kind of build that sense of staff community. While we're waiting to see if for any comments, I will add one. I did say we kind of ended naturally. The gardening program had kind of a part 2 in February, where the person who had done it initially said, hey, it's getting to be seed time. Would you like me to do another round and kind of talk to people about getting started, people who want to start from seed? And so we did a kind of a second round, hey, sequel to the gardening program in February, just a one shot, that to kind of, hey, we talked about gardening, but at the point at which we did it, it was pretty full into gardening season. Let's look at them. So I'm seeing virtual coffee hours. Honestly, my library does not have a great community culture. I'm hoping this is something we can build in the coming months. Maybe some of the ideas from today will help with that. I do from time to time ask staff doing elements of our training. Oh, I'm sorry, that was from previous. Should have read that first. I apologize. And I think our needs have changed too. I think last summer it was very clearly that we needed that community sense. We need a third generation on switching from a spring to a fall garden. We will take that to our presenter of gardening programs. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer to talk about kind of what's next for us in terms of training.
Sure. So we're moving towards a more typical summer semester. We're going to be open more, still some limitations with our physical locations, and towards really a truly more normal fall. So college employees are returning to campus full time, and more of our classes are being offered back on campus again. So we're looking at how do we take the best of what we can from this pandemic shift of our training into perhaps a more traditional environment where we are working in our physical locations 40 hours a week. So we don't have all the answers yet, but we feel pretty strongly that there's kind of three things that we do know at this point. One, we're going to continue to offer online and recorded training sessions. When we would do those in-person trainings, we really struggled. We do have 6 campuses. We are open a lot of hours. How do we get training to everybody? We tried recording some of the in-person ones. The recordings weren't great because the speaker would be so far away or the sound wouldn't be great. You couldn't hear the screen. Well, even when we do in-person sessions, we can always do a recorded version of it and have that recorded version up on the LibGuide so that people don't miss training, whether they have to be off that day or need to be on a desk or whatever the situation might be. And people can watch it again if they need a refresher. You know, it's always there available, even if you were at the training, for you to go back to. And this really gives us this sort of bank of training sessions that meet a variety of needs. You know, Emily mentioned one of the things that the training committee has been charged with is sort of onboarding and new employee training. Well, now we have this bank of recorded sessions that new employees can always go back to when they need it, or when staff take on new responsibilities that maybe they take something on new as a part of their individual development. There'll always be a recorded something that if they didn't attend it at the time because it wasn't part of their job, but now they are, they always have a version they can go back and look at as they're learning about their new task. Second is that we'll apply what we've learned about teaching and learning in this environment to doing sort of virtual instruction and one-on-one research consultations for students. We certainly suspect that even as, you know, classes return to a sort of pre-pandemic normal, we suspect that a lot of our online classes just won't go back to a totally asynchronous kind of model of instruction. They're using WebEx Teams, they're using live online sessions, and we suspect that that's really here to stay, that so those online students have a higher level of engagement rather than just engaging asynchronously with their faculty member and with their classmates. And so we're going to take these skills that we've helped staff develop in terms of presenting things in this format, you know, live, online, remote, so that we can better our ability to help faculty and students in those online classes. As well, even when we have students who might be coming back because they prefer to have a face-to-face class, we know that a lot of our students at a community college have transportation issues, they have childcare issues, and they can't always come to the library. You know, they can't always stick around after their class and make an appointment for help. But this way we can provide those students with a one-on-one, we can share our screen, we can walk them through a database in a way that benefits students who might have other issues or other reasons why they can't come for an in-person meeting with us. So it's really a new way for us to reach more students than we have in the past. And third, I think that the training committee itself has really learned to be intentional about matching the content of the training to the delivery method that we're offering it through. We know now more about what might really be best delivered online in this kind of format, what maybe truly does need to be an in-person, hands-on, all in a room together, if that's possible in the future type of training, as well as what's really best is just this little quick 3 to 5 minute video that it's sort of just in time when someone's like, oh, I forgot how to do that one thing in our integrated library system or in SpringShare, and they can go watch a 3-minute video and be like, oh, right, I click on this button and then this happens. I think we struggled with that a little bit prior to COVID of figuring out what was really the right mix of all these things. And this experience has really kind of enlightened us on what works best for those 3 different kinds of content delivery. And as a side note, I think Emily mentioned earlier, and so did Cheryl, the importance of having someone from library administration be involved in this. And I think there's one of the side benefits of that, I think, has been the communication around training, the importance of training, that these videos exist, that the recorded sessions exist. So I have it's existed for many, many years. I have a regular sort of staff update email that I send out at regular intervals that people are used to getting. And I was able to include information about the training sessions, information about the surveys. Oh, here's a video, go watch this. So we had this kind of very natural method of communicating what the training committee was doing to our staff that had kind of a natural undergirding of some authority so that people paid attention to it when it came out. That turned out to be really beneficial and wasn't something that suddenly felt different to people. It's very much part of our normal kind of communication that people expect and when they expect to get information and who they expect that information to come from. You can go to the next slide. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. And so we'd love to take any questions you might have or any comments. We've also put our contact information on the screen. So if you'd like to reach out to any of us after the session or anytime in the future, we would be happy to talk to you about anything that we presented or the things that our training committee works on. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It really makes me wish we had a training committee here. As a reminder, people are welcome to unmute themselves and ask questions, or you can put your questions into the chat.
I think I did make the LibGuide accessible so that you guys can at least look at or like what we covered and topics that we did, some that were short videos in which we did as full hour recorded sessions. You will not be able to watch the videos at this point. Those are private to CPCC right now.
So we do have a question from Holly. How difficult was it to initially create the training committee? My memory is that it wasn't difficult. I mean, like I mentioned, because we went through the strategic planning process, several committees were recommended as a part of that process. And some of that came from the facilitators and some of that came from them kind of walking us through determining what we needed. And I think training committee was one that was kind of understood from a lot of staff that kind of was a need that we had. I also, Jennifer, you might know more than I do because you've been there longer, but I think a form had previously existed. It had just not been in place for a while. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had some people who sort of took on staff training as part of their job responsibilities. And sometimes it had been one person and sometimes it had been a couple of people, just people who expressed an interest and wanted to do that. But I will say also about the committee, we were intentional about who representing areas of the library in terms of just being inclusive of all the areas, but also thinking about, like, for example, one of the training committee members has been our systems librarian. We know that Sierra, our ILS, is something that we will repeatedly need training on. So get people who are your experts in certain things that you're constantly going to need training on as a part of your committee. We also have a member of our instruction staff who's on our training committee. Obviously, our instruction staff make great trainers because they're great teachers themselves, but they also have that sort of eye line on what are students asking about, what assignments are coming up, what do people need to know in order to help students. So it's helped really to have this sort of cross-sectional, cross-functional group of people. And then we've, as a committee, you know, I would say, like, set yourself up for small wins at the beginning, because the more you build confidence in yourselves that what you're doing is good for your library, that's benefiting people, and the more other people buy into, oh, the training committee is putting something on, this is going to be good, I'm going to go to this. So if you're trying to build more of that culture, I think about who's involved in training, and then think about just setting yourself up again for some small wins at the beginning, just to build buy-in to what you're doing.
And one thing that the training committee, that the reason we work so well, Jennifer, myself, and Emily are committee members since 2016. And every year they ask, do you want to change your committee? And our answer is no. Please leave me on the training committee. Part of that is Emily's excellent at running a meeting and running training committee, but we get our work done during the meeting, and we're committed to working during that meeting. And so yes, we still have homework and, to-do items and things to follow up on, but the bulk of the matter, we're working together as a committee, and that way no one person is left updating something, unless it makes sense. Like, I update a lot of the guide, but Chad has access, and so does Monica, so that we all update different sections of that guide. But so that really has kept our committee focused and working, and our committee members stay. The only reason I think we lost one is because she retired. And other than that, we've not lost a committee member since 2016. And I think that speaks volumes, not just to the commitment we have to this committee, but also how valuable it is to our fellow employees, because their feedback to us is so encouraging and motivating, that even if it was a training where only 2 people or 3 people were like, wow, that was awesome, and everyone else was like, oh, okay, that was good, small wins. The fact that I got one awesome is awesome. Sometimes you don't get everybody because it's different topics, and so that might not be their forte. But so I want to just comment on that's really been, we're a working committee, and we function really well because of that.
Yeah, I'll add a couple things, and one is kind of just reiterating what Cheryl said. So our dean every year asks all of the library's committees the same questions, and she sends it to the chairs of the committee. And one is, do you want to continue as chair? Do you want to pass it off to someone else? Is there anyone on your committee that wants to leave the committee? Is there anyone you want to add? And we get those questions every year. Every year I've been chair since 2016 when it started. Every year I offer, does somebody else want to take this on? And I do get a no. So the leadership has stayed the same within the committee, but I've made it very clear that while I do want to stay involved with the committee, I do not need to be the one running it every time. So far, no one has wanted to take that on. We've been really lucky with low turnover, and I do think we are very, people see what we do. And so we're very visible because everyone is aware of trainings. That helps. But we've been very lucky with low turnover, and we do work really well together, and have different strengths in different areas of the college or different areas of the department that we're coming from, which really helps. 2 things in terms of the initial question: was it difficult to kind of get started? One thing that I think really helped us was having administrative support and buy-in, and some of that was just automatic with Jennifer being on the committee. When your director of libraries is on the committee, that gives it a lot of weight. We also had a lot of support just from the entire administrative staff, the dean, in setting us up and saying this is important. There are still times in meetings that she will say, I'm going to charge the training committee with this, so that everyone hears it and knows this is a group that I've got faith in. It's coming from things that I've asked them to do. So having the support of our library administration has been huge, and that's part of why we've been successful. Is when we can say, I think we need training on this, I think we need training on that. And when we go to someone whose area it is that we say, hey, we think this is a need, we get typically good response and participation. Because like I said, we're not always the ones offering the training. I see our role much more as coordinating and deciding what needs to be and then finding it somewhere. Sometimes that's within our own library staff. Sometimes it's within other people at the college. And in rare cases, it might be someone from outside of the college as well.
And I think
The
part
other-
of it is, oh, I'm sorry, Emily. I
No,
was gonna say
no,
just-
if you're tied to that topic, go ahead and then I'll
Yes,
go
I
on.
am. We did, after we ran out of kind of the initial charge that we had gotten from as a result of the strategic plan, we then went back to our staff and said, okay, what do you need training on? How much do you need training? Is it the basics that you need, or is it like really how to delve into cataloging or really how to and go into ordering materials and doing collection development? And so we could offer, so we went back to our staff and said, okay, tell us what are your topics? And we came up with a huge list, and then we sent it back out and said, okay, rank these. Give us your top 5, I think it was. And so we didn't pick the topics out of thin air, which I think is the most important thing is, again, and then when we ran the session, we could say, per the survey, the #1 request was training on X. And so we're going to run training on this day. And thank you. This is, 90% of the people said they wanted more training on this. And so we had numbers and information to back that up. So we weren't creating it all from scratch and from what we thought. It was not our perspective, but rather we had data to back that up. And again, it was like a simple Google survey. We didn't Google form. We didn't go crazy with it. But those little surveys really can make a big difference.
And I agree. And that was kind of where I was going. The other thing I think that helped make us successful is that we were clear when we were being responsive, is that when we got something that came through a survey or something, we made it clear that that's why we were doing it. And so people could see we did listen, we did take what they were saying into account, things like that. And I think that really helped. And I'll give another example too, because while Cheryl's right, and we have done these formal surveys of what topics and things, we do that roughly every 2 years, although it's more kind of when we feel like we need it. It's not on a set schedule. And this might just be that I get most of them as the chair of the committee, but people will just come to me and say, hey, Emily, is training committee thought about doing things on this? Like they won't wait for a formal survey, which I think really helps. I mean, we are lucky that we're kind of large, but we're also not so large that people don't know each other. So I will get, whether it's a conversation when I pass somebody, or they'll send me a WebEx chat message and just say, hey, I've got a suggestion for training committee. This is coming. Sometimes it's problems that they're seeing. We do chat support for students, and the person who kind of monitors that, if they see the same kinds of things coming up, they'll bring that to me and say, hey, I don't want to wait for the next survey, but we're getting a lot of questions about this. Maybe we can figure out a way to address it. But I'll just get folks who either because it's something that they're in charge of and they're seeing isn't happening the way it should, or because it's something that they wish they had more training on. We kind of get all of those things. So I'll get a lot of informal comments too. They're like, hey, can training committee do this? And I'll add it to our next agenda and we'll figure out what we can do. And that's really helped too, to show that we are responsive. And I think that has really meant, I think most of the department has, if you did a survey, would have a pretty high opinion of what we do, because they see that we do respond to what they're asking for.
So I know we're out of time, but there is our contact information there. So if you want to ask any questions of us, I know all 3 of us would be happy to respond.
Yes, thank you again. I encourage you to reach out to our presenters with any other questions you have. We are going into a lunch break now, but we encourage you to come back at 1 and join us for another round of great sessions. Thank you guys so much.